times tough. Over 1.1 million of us have read Family Meals for £1 on the BBC. For cost of living tips and advice, go to bbc.co.uk.
This is BBC One Scotland. Now the BBC News at 6 o'clock with Sophie Raworth, and reporting Scotland with Sally Magnuson.
At 6, the family of the missing woman Nicola Bully call for the focus to be on finding her, not speculation and rumours about her private life. It comes after the police revealed personal details of the 45-year-old's struggles with the menopause and alcohol. In the past few minutes, a new development as Lancashire Police say they have referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. We'll have more on that in a moment. Also on the programme. Strike action by nurses in England intensifies with a 48-hour walkout planned next month. More than £3 billion record profits for the owner of British Gas, Centrica, the latest energy company to benefit from the global rise in energy prices. Almost a year after Russia invaded Ukraine, the BBC's John Simpson talks to President Zelensky about his country's future. And back in the water, how local communities are getting together to reopen pools and leisure centres closed because of soaring energy costs.
And in Reporting Scotland at 6:30. The search is on for a new SNP leader as nominations open to replace Nicola Sturgeon. We'll take a look at the big issues that lie ahead for an incoming First Minister.
Good evening. The family of the missing woman Nicola Bully have called for people to focus on finding her and to stop speculating about her private life. It's nearly 3 weeks since the 45-year-old disappeared on a dog walk in Lancashire after dropping her 2 children at school. Detectives have been criticised for revealing yesterday very personal details about her struggles with alcohol and the menopause. Tonight, Lancashire Police say they have referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct. It's over contact they had with Nicola Bully more than a fortnight before she disappeared. Danny Savage reports.
Nicola Bully, the most high-profile missing person in Britain. When she vanished nearly 3 weeks ago, there was no suggestion from police, friends or family she was vulnerable. But at a packed news conference yesterday, Lancashire Police revealed for the first time that she was classed as a high-risk missing person.
Based on a number of specific vulnerabilities that we were made aware of, Nicola was graded as high risk.
They later added that she had significant issues with alcohol due to her struggles with the menopause. Today there was a news statement from her family. We as a family believe that the public focus has become distracted from finding Nikki and more about speculation and rumours. There are people out there threatening to sell stories about her. This is appalling and needs to stop. Due to the perimenopause, Nikki was taking HRT to help, but this was giving her intense headaches, which caused Nikki to stop taking the HRT, thinking that may have helped her, but only ended up causing this crisis. Nikki, we hope you are reading this and know that we love you so much and your girls want a cuddle. We all need you home. Don't be scared. We all love you so very much. And there has been an awful lot of unfounded speculation here over the last 2.5 weeks. People have come to this village looking for clues, carrying out their own investigations, not believing the police who've had to issue dispersal orders to stop people creeping around here at night. But could all of that been avoided if yesterday's information about her vulnerabilities been known from the start?
If Nicola's health and her depression had been discussed on day one of this case, the whole dialogue, the coverage of the case by the public and the media would have been in a different sphere.
The detail about Nicola Bully's alcohol problems being released has concerned some experts.
At some point in the future, I think the police need to give women the reassurance that if their mum or sister or daughter goes missing, it is not typical that this information is released into the public domain. It's only if it evidently helps the investigation. And I think people are still puzzled today as to why this level of information went into the public domain in the way that it did.
Lancashire Police insist they are being as transparent as they can be. Their search for Nicola goes on. Her family hope she is still alive.
Well, Danny joins us now from St Michael's. And this latest development that the police have announced tonight, just explain what it is.
Yeah, what it is, Sophie, is that Lancashire Police have referred themselves to the Independent Office for Police Conduct over contact they had with Nicola Bully on the 10th of January when officers were called to her home over reports of concern for welfare. That was 17 days before she went missing. Now, separately, the IOPC has also made contact with Lancashire Police to ask them for more details about why they released that personal information yesterday, both in that news conference and subsequently in the evening when they released details about Nicola's struggles with alcohol. It's also worth noting that the huge amount of police resources that have got into this investigation is because of the very reason that she was deemed at high risk from the moment she went missing. Police want to find her, and you feel that sort of releasing this information is to put a lid on rumours and speculation, as you heard in the family statement, the suggestion that people are trying to sell stories about Nicola. Sophie.
Danny Savage with the latest there from Lancashire. Thank you. Strike action by nurses in England will intensify next month with a 48-hour strike. The dates have just been announced. Our health editor Hugh Pym is here with all the details. Hugh.
Yes, Sophie, previous strikes by Royal College of Nursing members have been over 2 days for 12 hours each day. But the next one will be over a full 48 hours in England at 120 NHS organisations, more than before. The strike will start at 6 a.m. on Wednesday, March the 1st and continue until 6 a.m. on Friday, March the 3rd. So that is a bigger set of disruption that the RCN are planning. Secondly, there's another big difference. Whereas previously the union would be in talks locally with hospital managements over what services would be exempted and continue, like intensive care and some cancer services, that won't happen this time. There'll be an assumption of all members leaving work over those days, and the RCN will only negotiate nationally with individual hospitals. Of course, in Wales and Scotland, it's a different situation. There have been new offers made by the governments which are being considered by unions, or they're in talks. Now, Pat Cullen, General Secretary of the RCN, has said that there is, in effect, by refusing to negotiate on the government's part, there's no alternative to actually going on strike. More members are doing that. Steve Barclay, though, the Health Secretary covering England, has said that this is a significant escalation and there is a risk to patient safety.
Hugh Pym, our health editor, thank you. And news of more strikes as well this evening, because in the last hour, the rail union, the RMT, has said it will take nationwide strike action on 4 days in March and April after employers refused to put any new offers on the table. The dates are all day on Thursday the 16th of March, Saturday the 18th, Thursday the 30th of March and Saturday the 1st of April, the start of the Easter school holidays for many people. The owner of British Gas, Centrica, has announced record profits of more than £3 billion last year. The surge is largely because of higher oil and gas prices after Russia invaded Ukraine. British Gas was recently criticised for using debt agents to force-fit prepayment meters into the homes of vulnerable customers. Our business editor, Simon Jack, is here and has more. Simon.
Thanks, Sophie. Yes, more records being set. British gas owner Centrica made record profits of £3.3 billion last year. That's more than 3 times the amount they made the year before. Now, Centrica's gas and electricity generation business benefited from energy prices. We can see there that hit new records after the Russian invasion of Ukraine. But Centrica is essentially 2 different businesses. Now, the part that produces gas and generates electricity from nuclear and renewables accounted for 98% of those record profits. Its retail arm, British Gas, made just 2% of that, £72 million, supplying over 7 million residential customers, so a profit of about £10 per year per customer. Now, British Gas may not be making much money, but it made headlines when agents for British Gas were filmed forcing customers in arrears onto prepayment meters.
Hello, it's British Gas, your gas supplier. We're here with a court warrant. Can you please open the door? Otherwise, there are lots of them open it for you. This is the exciting bit. I love this bit.
Which bit?
This bit. I love this bit.
Oh, thank you.
Single mum Emily Brown got a knock at her door. She'd been waiting for a smart meter to be installed, but an agent fitted a prepayment meter instead.
I just was in a situation where I didn't know what to do. I didn't have the confidence to tell him to leave, and he was quite adamant to stay and get his job done anyway. So I just felt quite, I suppose, scared.
British Gas has since removed the meter, apologised to Emily and suspended the agents involved. Now, some people ask, why can't Centrica use those massive production profits to lower retail bills? But competition rules prevent it from selling the energy it produces more cheaply to its own retail arm than to other companies. The company paid £1 billion last year in tax, including £52 million in those recently introduced windfall levies. It expects to pay £2.5 billion over the next 4 years. UK oil and gas companies now pay a tax rate of 75% on UK profits, one of the highest rates in the world. And Labour said that's still not enough and urged the government to abolish rules that allow companies like Centrica to offset new fossil fuel investments against those profits. Now, Centrica say they don't ever expect to make profits like this again, but that might be little comfort to customers of all energy companies who will see prices rise again in April as government assistance is reduced. Sophie.
Simon, thank you. The search for a new First Minister of Scotland has begun after Nicola Sturgeon announced she was resigning yesterday. She had been in the role for more than 8 years. Her sudden departure raises questions over the direction of the Scottish Government, as our Scotland editor James Cook reports.
Is Scottish independence running out of road? Downing Street is blocking a second vote on this nation leaving the UK. Instead, Nicola Sturgeon suggested treating the next general election as a referendum in all but name. But now she's going, the SNP may abandon that approach, leaving some veteran campaigners frustrated with the status quo.
We're stuck, in very many ways, we're stuck politically when we should be able to move forward. And honestly, it's extraordinary how you can think that if you want to have a referendum, then you're told that this is an issue that doesn't matter. If you try to have it in an actual general election context, you're told that's not the kind of issue that a general election is about. Now everyone really realises this is Hotel California because there is no way you can leave.
But this supporter of independence says Nicola Sturgeon's party is partly to blame for that logjam and should focus on achieving independence, not retaining power.
Delivering statehood for Scotland is an extremely complex project. The question of currency, borders, European Union membership, the foreign policy implications, and these are huge dilemmas for the SNP leadership.
And do you think they're keeping independence just bubbling away without ever really getting to a referendum?
Well, the phrase I use is that independence is to be kept on the boil without letting it overflow. And so in that sense, they're more interested in perpetuating electoral dominance.
That tension in the SNP between governing and campaigning has existed for a long time. Being in power here in Edinburgh has certainly provided the party with a commanding platform, but it's also brought plenty of baggage. Labour, campaigning here in Glasgow against council cuts, sense an opportunity to recover ground lost to the SNP and, perhaps, to help Sir Keir Starmer become Prime Minister.
If you look specifically at the record, let's be honest, it's 15 years of SNP failure. And here in Glasgow, that's one prime example of that. They have destroyed local government. They've destroyed the relationship of respect between local government and our national government. And they have decimated local budgets. And I think there comes a point where people have to stand up and say, enough is enough.
There are other pressures too. Westminster has blocked a Holyrood law designed to make it easier to legally change gender. The SNP's Green Party partners want the next First Minister to challenge that.
The Gender Recognition Reform Act was passed by the Scottish Parliament and supported by members of every party in that Parliament. It would be absurd for any First Minister who believed in Scottish devolution to go against the will of the overwhelming majority of Scottish MSPs. So of course I expect the new First Minister to carry that forward.
Nicola Sturgeon insists this is not the end of the road for her dream. But if the path ahead were clear, would she really be quitting? James Cook, BBC News.
Well, we'll be talking to James in a moment about what happens next, because the governing body of the Scottish National Party is about to meet to draw up a timetable for the leadership race. So who are the potential contenders? Well, Angus Robertson appears to be one of the favourites. He's currently the Constitution Secretary and has been a high-profile figure in the party for the best part of a decade. He was the SNP's leader in Westminster. Finance Secretary Kate Forbes is also seen as a front-runner. She's risen quickly through the ranks in recent years and delivered the government's budget in 2020, just hours after her predecessor quit. She is currently on maternity leave. John Swinney, who is the Deputy First Minister, is another potential contender. He's been leader of the SNP before and is therefore probably the most experienced option. Justice Secretary Keith Brown is seen as close to the party's grassroots and was elected the party's deputy leader in 2018, and Humza Yousaf, the Health Secretary, who has held several senior posts in government. He's part of a newer generation of SNP figures, having been elected to the Parliament in 2011. Well, let's go back to James Cook, our Scotland editor, who's in Edinburgh. So what does happen now?
Well, what will be happening right now, Sophie, is that the members of that National Executive Committee of the SNP will be firing up their computers and their phones because in under 15 minutes time now, they'll be having that virtual meeting to decide what to do. Top of the agenda, the process for electing a new leader, for filling those big shoes of Nicola Sturgeon. Also, though, the vexed issue of the party's independent strategy. We heard a little bit about the disputes surrounding this idea of treating the next general election as what they call a de facto referendum on independence. That was Nicola Sturgeon's preferred option. Perhaps the party will now move away from that as she's heading out of the door. And what that also means is that the special conference due to discuss it next month might be pushed into the future. That's something they'll also be discussing tonight.
James, thank you. The time is just after 6:15. Our top story this evening. The family of the missing woman, Nicola Bully, call for the focus to be on finding her and not what they call appalling speculation about her private life. And still to come, how local communities are getting together to reopen leisure centres closed because of soaring energy costs.
And in Reporting Scotland at 6:30, as we've heard, the search is on for a new SNP leader as nominations open to replace Nicola Sturgeon. And a judge rules a Scottish security guard at a UK embassy was paid by Russia for passing on secret documents.
Next week marks the first anniversary of Russia's invasion of Ukraine. President Zelensky has today been speaking to the BBC's World Affairs editor, John Simpson, reflecting on what has happened and on what may be ahead. Mr. Zelensky claimed his troops could keep defending their country until they're able to launch a counter-offensive. And crucially, he ruled out conceding any territory to Russia in a potential peace deal. John Simpson has just sent this report from Kyiv.
Do you want British fighter jets next?
With the anniversary of the Russian invasion coming close, President Zelensky is showing signs of increasing confidence. He's been visiting several of his main backers in Britain and other NATO countries, and the promises of weapons and support that he's received have clearly buoyed him up. When I met him today, he was defiant and seemed more than usually sure of his position. I asked what he felt about the threat that Vladimir Putin might strike at Ukraine through neighbouring Belarus, and he dismissed it out of hand.
And it will be a big mistake for him and for Belarus. It will be a historical mistake.
But if Belarus does involve itself with the...
We'll fight.
Can you survive?
We'll fight. We will survive. We will survive, yeah.
How certain was he that Ukraine could withstand the increasing attacks which the Russians are likely to unleash for the anniversary of their invasion? Attacks are going on from several directions, he told me, switching into Ukrainian. Our defence is holding. We need powerful modern weapons. They're the only language Russia understands. We're responding in their language. Russian forces have been making gains in eastern Ukraine during the past week or so, but President Zelensky certainly isn't in any mood to make concessions to Russia. Any territorial compromises, he told me, are only going to weaken our country. So it's not about compromise. We make millions of compromises every day. But the question is, with Putin? No, because we don't trust Putin. Of course, President Zelensky knows he's got to look and sound confident, otherwise it'd be seen as weakness. But there's no doubt that he's talking much tougher and more uncompromisingly now. I interviewed him in October, and it was noticeable that he's quite a lot more tired looking now, more drawn, paler and so on. He's been through a hard time, but he's bouncier than he was back then. It's quite interesting. Back in a few months ago, he was talking about Russia being forced to withdraw to the borders of Ukraine as they were the day before the invasion a year ago. Now he's talking about Russia withdrawing to the borders it agreed for Ukraine back in 1991. You can see there's a lot more kind of enthusiasm and a lot more confidence in the way that he's talking now.
John Simpson, our World Affairs editor, thank you. Well, the Labour leader Sir Keir Starmer has also been in Kyiv today, meeting President Zelensky. Sir Keir was taken to the suburbs of Irpin and Bucha, both scenes of alleged war crimes committed by Russian troops. Sir Keir said he wanted to acknowledge the courage of the Ukrainian people. Meanwhile, the Belarusian leader, Alexander Lukashenko, has told the BBC he's ready to allow Russia to use his country as a staging post for a new offensive in Ukraine. A year ago, Russia launched its invasion from Belarusian territory with the blessing of Mr. Lukashenko, who's not recognised in the West as the legitimate president of Belarus. Our Russia editor, Steve Rosenberg, asked Mr. Lukashenko if he was prepared to do the same again.
I'm ready to provide territory again, but I'm also ready to wage war, together with the Russians, from the territory of Belarus, but only if anyone, even one soldier, comes to our land with weapons to kill my people.
Well, you can see more of Mr. Lukashenko's comments with our Russia editor Steve Rosenberg tonight on the BBC News at 10 and after that on the BBC iPlayer. Accident and emergency departments are failing to meet the needs of disabled people, according to the head of the Royal College of Emergency Medicine. He said too often A&E is a safety net for those who should be able to get treatment in the community, but the services are no longer there. The government says it is reducing long waits by increasing bed capacity, investing in new ambulances and expanding community services. Just a warning, this report by our Disability News correspondent Nikki Fox contains upsetting images from the start.
This is what a crisis in emergency care means for this young boy. Hours spent waiting, in pain.
We are in hospital probably every couple of weeks. We have some longer stretches, don't we? But we've been in there a lot.
The only place Ivan can get seen is in A&E, and lately he's been waiting up to 12 hours. He has complex disabilities, but the reason why he's going in so much is for constipation.
It shouldn't be being managed in accident and emergency. That just blows my mind completely that's what we've been told to do to manage it.
For over a year now, Alyssa's been fighting for her son to get regular treatment at home, but there aren't any community services that can help.
Seeing Ivan in so much pain, having to wait so long and being so distressed, how do you feel? It must be awful.
It's heartbreaking. He does have a trauma response to going into the hospital, so he recognises where we're going and he starts to panic.
It's Friday evening and Anjum's had no choice but to come to A&E again.
I'm sorry. I don't know whether the tears are frustration or anxiety or what it is. I feel really guilty.
Lately, Anjum's been spending 45 hours a week here, all to sort her block catheter.
Just feel really anxious because I'm wet and in pain and just really uncomfortable. coming to hospital all the time just makes me feel like I'm draining the system that is already stretched.
After you. Lovely.
I met up with Anjum between hospital visits.
What kind of pain are you in, Anjum, when you're waiting for that amount of time?
I spend a lot of time lying down because of problems with my tummy. So yeah, if I'm waiting in my wheelchair for 15 hours, it's agony.
Doctors say that too often disabled people are being forced to use emergency care when many problems could be sorted by using local services.
Disabled people are at a particular disadvantage with emergency care, partly because the departments are so full and the hospitals are so full that they're ending up having to wait a lot longer in areas which are really not well designed for them.
And for Alyssa's son Ivan, who also has sensory issues, it's even more distressing.
You and Ivan have been having to go back and forth to A&E for a year now. Are you worried about the long-term impact that's going to have on your son?
I am worried about it. I don't know how long it can be sustained. I've had to give up my job. My husband's had a lot of time off work. Ivan's missed education and time with his family. It's hard to get your head around the idea that a little boy, like a 3-year-old boy, is having to go through that amount of pain, those kind of weights. But it's happening, and Ivan can't be the only child that's fallen through the cracks like that. He won't be.
Nikki Fox, BBC News.
Some breaking news for you now, because in the last few minutes the BBC has learnt that the Prime Minister Rishi Sunak is expected to travel to Northern Ireland this evening. Let's talk to our political correspondent Leila Nathu in Westminster. A surprise visit. What's happening?
Sophie, there's been a mounting speculation in recent days that the UK and the EU could be close to striking a deal on the Northern Ireland Protocol. Remember, that's the bit of the Brexit deal that allows goods to flow freely across the Irish border. It was a hugely contentious bit of that agreement. It has stopped the government in Northern Ireland from functioning, but there has been a lot of speculation, a bit of a flurry of activity, if you like, in recent days that suggests a deal is getting closer, and certainly a visit expected from Prime Minister Rishi Sunak to Northern Ireland later this evening is adding to the sense that something could be moving there. Now, last time he went to Northern Ireland, it was in December. He met Stormont Party leaders then to discuss the protocol. It appears as if we could be inching closer to a deal on this crucial part of the Brexit agreement.
Leila, thank you, and more on that, of course, on the BBC News at 10. More than 350 leisure centres, pools and gyms across the UK have either closed or made changes to their services in response to rising energy bills in the past year. But community groups are working to get centres back open. Dan Johnson reports now from Cornwall on the communities taking matters into their own hands.
They feared they'd never get back in the water here. But Launceston Leisure Centre is under new management, and it's the community taking back control.
What's the water like?
It feels really good. It's really good to finally be back in here.
I got really happy when I heard it was going to reopen, because it's that part every Friday, coming here as a group, collective, and just being able to see each other.
The only other place is about 45 minutes away, which is a really long time if you want to be able to go there.
Soaring running costs have seen so many pools struggle.
It's shocking what they're doing with swimming pools at the moment. You know, they're storing up problems for 10, 15 years down the line. If kids can't swim, it's going to be a massive effect on later life.
But this community effort seems to have support.
I couldn't believe how many people we've had come in this morning.
It's backed by a local businessman.
Do you feel responsible?
I do now. I didn't, to start with, I was almost thinking, do I want to take this on because it's just too much work? It's completely the right thing to do. And to be honest, with the support that I've got from everybody around me, you know, I've got no worries at all. It's going to be absolutely fine.
But the optimism isn't shared across the industry, with even higher bills coming.
When it comes to the 1st of April, I think we can see a tranche of price increases at facilities, and also pools reconsidering whether they can stay open.
In Falmouth, the slides and swimming pool are already standing silent.
They got closed down last March, so yeah.
But here too, locals are trying to turn things round.
Communities shouldn't be having to save the centres. It's a sad state of affairs that we are. The government need, as I said, need to see that that's happening and need to help us save them, because the impact of them closing down is more detrimental to every community.
There's a warning that without more support to help with energy bills in particular, more places will end up closed like this. And then even the most committed community groups may struggle to save them. Dan Johnson, BBC News, Falmouth.
Time for the weather now. Darren Bett is here. Hello.
Hello there, Sophie. It is going to be getting windy for all of us overnight, and we start with the warning of strongest winds across northern areas by tomorrow morning. Scotland, the Pennines and northern England could have some very windy conditions with some disruption likely. Now, it's all due to an area of low pressure that will strengthen and deepen by the early hours of tomorrow morning as it runs to the north of Scotland. That is Storm Otto, the first named storm of the season, named by the Danish Met Service. It will sweep into southern Scandinavia by tomorrow at lunchtime. But before then, we've got some more rain as well as strengthening winds coming in overnight. The rain mainly across northern parts of the UK, turning more showery later on in the night, by which time we've got those really strong winds, and that means it's going to be a really mild night, perhaps no lower than 11 degrees in Northern Ireland. The story though is the strength of the wind could be touching 80 miles an hour perhaps in the Northern Isles, widely 60-70 miles an hour in Scotland in the morning, and this is where we've got the peak of the winds early tomorrow morning over the Pennines to the east of the Pennines. Some very gusty winds as well, gusting 60 or 70 miles an hour. The winds do gradually ease down through the day, and at the same time we've got this band of cloud not bringing much rain but heading down into southern England. Away from here it'll brighten up, there'll be some sunshine. The showers in Scotland do become fewer as those winds continue to drop, and these are the temperatures. So another mild one, perhaps 14 or 15 degrees in East Anglia and the southeast, but there is some rain coming into Northern Ireland by tomorrow evening. That area of low pressure will come in and that weather front will slide away. It'll bring some snow tomorrow night over the Scottish mountains, and then with that weather front stuck across the north of Northern Ireland, the far north of England, and pushing into southern Scotland, here we're going to find a bit of rain during the course of Saturday. But to the north of that and to the south, for the most part, it will be dry and there'll be some spells of sunshine. 8 degrees across northern Scotland, 14 or 15 in the southeast, and not as windy by Saturday. Sophie.
Darren, thank you. And that is it from us on the BBC News at 6. It's time now for the news wherever you are. Goodbye.
Tonight on Reporting Scotland, the search is on for a new SNP leader as nominations open to replace Nicola Sturgeon. The party's National Executive Committee is meeting now to draw up a timetable for the leadership race. Some in the party are calling for discussions about independence to be postponed until a new leader's in place. Also in tonight's programme, we'll take a look at the issues at the top of the agenda for the incoming First Minister.
I would say definitely the NHS. They need to do something drastically about that. If we get the economy sorted out, I think everything else after that would fall into line.
A judge rules that a Scottish security guard at a UK embassy was paid by Russia for passing on secret documents.
And coming up in the sport, Rangers manager Michael Beale admits his side probably won't catch Celtic in the race for the Premiership title.
Hello, I'm Sally Magnuson. Welcome to Thursday's programme. After yesterday's resignation by the First Minister, high-profile figures in the SNP are calling for an independence summit to be delayed until a successor is chosen. Attention now turns, of course, to who that will be. At this stage, nobody has yet declared an intention to stand. The SNP's Executive Committee are meeting right now to discuss the timing of a leadership contest. Our political correspondent Lindsay Bewes has more.
Off duty and going home.